I'm going to preview the 1 seed South Carolina versus 4 seed Maryland women's basketball game, which will literally be played on March 28th at 4 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. And as of right now, South Carolina is favored by 17.5. And I cannot memorize all this stuff, y'all. So I apologize if I need to look down. Okay. So South Carolina is 32-3 on the year, 15-1 in the SEC, while Maryland is 25-7 on the year, 13-5 in the Big Ten. And honestly, I didn't want to do the UCLA game because I have a feeling what that's going to happen there. And I honestly didn't want to do LSU versus NC State either. So I just thought, might as well. Sure, the spread is pretty big for a Sweet 16 game, but there's a reason for it, of course, because South Carolina is still a really solid team, and I know they have an injury. I know they do. And they don't have as much height either. But there's a reason why they're 32-3 on the year. There's a reason. So obviously I cannot go with points per game in order here because they don't have that option on ESPN. That's not on the phone, as in like iPad. Yeah, I have to just go starters, then some other bench players just to make it easier. So first player I'm going to mention is Chloe Kitch, number 21, 6'2" forward. That's a junior. 10.1 points per game, 7.9 rebounds per game, 2.1 assists per game, 1.4 turnovers per game, 0.8 steals per game, 1.6 fouls per game, 81.6% on free throws on 76 attempts, 31.6% on threes on 19 attempts. There's Sania Fegan, number 20, 6'3" forward. That's a senior. 8.1 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per game, 1.6 turnovers per game, 0.7 steals per game, 1.5 blocks per game, 2.1 fouls per game, 79.3% on free throws on 58 attempts, and 2 for 5 on threes. So as you can tell, not a 3-point shooter. There's Bree Hall, number 23, 6-foot guard. That's a senior. 6.4 points per game, 3.1 rebounds per game, 0.6 turnovers per game, 1.2 fouls per game, 67.5% on free throws on 40 attempts, 38.3% on threes on 107 attempts. And there's Raven Johnson, number 25, 5'9" guard. That's a junior. 5 points per game, 4.3 rebounds per game, 2.9 assists per game, 1 turnover per game, 1.4 steals per game, 0.9 fouls per game, 65% on free throws, but that's only 20 attempts, and 28.4% on threes on 74 attempts. And there's Tihane Payapo, or actually Pau. Yeah, I think that's right. P-A-O. Apologize if I butchered that, because I know I heard it before. Like, I believe from a year ago. Number 0, 6 foot. 5 foot. She's a 5'9" guard, not 6 foot. That's a senior. 9.7 points per game, 2.8 rebounds per game, 2.9 assists per game, 1.2 turns per game, 1.1 steals per game, 0.8 fouls per game, 80% on free throws on 30 attempts, 37.1% on threes on 151 attempts. And there's Joyce Edwards, number 8, 6'3" forward. That's a freshman. 13.2 points per game, 4.9 rebounds per game, 1.1 steals per game, 1.8 turns per game, 1.6 fouls per game, 78% on free throws on 127 attempts, and 0 for 3 on threes. So really not a 3-point shooter. And this, I might as well go over like Sakima Walker, number 35, 6'5" center. That's a senior, and I know she does not play that much. 1.4 points per game, 0.7 fouls per game, 71.4% on free throws on 7 attempts. That's really all you need to know. Oh, yeah, and there's Miriam Dowda, number 30, 6'4" forward. That's a junior, 2 points per game, 0.8 fouls per game, 76.7% on threes on 30 attempts, 22.7% on threes on 22 attempts. There's Maddie McDaniel, number 1, 5'9" guard. That's a freshman. 3.4 points per game. 0.8 steals per game. 0.7 turnovers per game. 0.6 fouls per game. 77.9. 67.9% on free throws on 28 attempts. 3 for 12 on threes. There's Melissa or Malaysia Milaysia. Full Wiley, number 12, 5'10" guard. That's a sophomore, 11.8 points per game, 2.9 rebounds per game, 1.8 turnovers per game, 1.6 steals per game, 0.8 blocks per game, 1.5 fouls per game, 77.9% on free throws on 95 attempts, 26.3% on threes on 114 attempts. And the last player we're going to mention for South Carolina is Tessa Johnson, number 5. 6-foot guard. That's a sophomore. 8.6 points per game. 2.2 rebounds per game. 1.2 turnovers per game. 0.7 steals per game. 1.1 fouls per game. 80.4% on free throws on 51 attempts. 42% on threes on 100 attempts. So that's all the players you need to know for South Carolina. Now I'm going to go to Maryland. And obviously they're coming off of a double overtime win, so, and I know they do have one player that's out for a year. I know they do. Of course, same thing goes for South Carolina, but that's besides the point here. So the first player we're going to really mention for South Carolina is Ali Kubik, number 14. A 6'2" forward. That's a senior. 9 points per game. 4.7 rebounds per game. 1 turnover per game. 0.6 blocks per game. 1.7 fouls per game. 64.9% on free throws on 74 attempts. 30.9% on threes on 55 attempts. There's Christina Doss, number 15. 6'2" forward. That's a senior. 8.5 points per game, 7.6 rebounds per game, 2 turnovers per game, 0.7 steals per game, 0.9 blocks per game, 3.1 fouls per game, 55.9% on free throws on 111 attempts. There's Sarah Biasu, number 1, 5'5" guard. That's a senior. 10.6 points per game, 2.6 assists per game, 1.6 turnovers per game, 1.6 fouls per game, 0.8 steals per game, 94.6% on free throws on 37 attempts, 45.1% on threes on 144 attempts. There's Kaylin Smickle, number 2, 6-foot guard. That's a junior. 18 points per game, 4.4 rebounds per game. 2.9 turnovers per game, 1.5 steals per game, 2.4 fouls per game, 82.8% on free throws on 192 attempts, 35.3% on threes on 119 attempts. There's Cheyenne Sellers, number 0, 6'2" guard. Is a senior. 14.5 points per game, 3.7 rebounds per game, 4.1 assists per game, 3.3 turnovers per game, 0.9 steals per game, 2.2 fouls per game, 86.4% on free throws on 125 attempts, 41.3% on threes on 75 attempts. And there's obviously more players I need to mention here. Okay, the first player I'm really going to mention is Mer McLean. Yeah, she was at UConn, if you don't recall. The 5'11" guard. That's a senior. 4.1 points per game, 4.4 rebounds per game, 1.1 turnovers per game, 1.6 fouls per game. 0 for 2 on threes, 76.9% on free throws on 65 10s, 0.8 steals per game, 1.1 turnovers per game. And she was at Virginia as well, so yeah, if you recognize that name, you'll know why. And I'm going to go over Salem Parfenbarger, number 6. 6'2" guard. It's his junior. 9.2 points per game, 7.3 rebounds per game, 2 assists per game, 2.3 fouls per game, 1 steal per game, 0.7 blocks per game, 1.8 fouls per game, 87% on free throws, on 54 attempts, 30.1% on threes, on 123 attempts. And I'm really going to mention like 2 more players here, and it's Amari DeBerry, number 42. And I know some of these players might not play for both of these teams, but I might as well. 6'6" forward. It's a senior. 2.6 points per game, 1 turnover per game, 0.8 blocks per game, 1 foul per game, 57.1% on free throws, on 7 attempts, 0 for 1 on threes. And as you could tell, she was at UConn too. And there's Emily Fisher. I'm really going to just mention one last player, and that's it. Number 3, 6-foot guard. It's a sophomore. 1.7 points per game, 0.8 turnovers per game, 1.1 fouls per game, 56.3% on free throws, on 16 attempts, 1 for 2 on threes. So across the board, you got to limit your foul trouble while getting them in foul trouble. You got to make adjustments on the fly, both offensively and defensively, not just from first half to second half, but during those quarters as well. You got to adjust to the officiating. You got to be the more mentally tougher team. You got to out-hustle them and do this for your seniors. I mean, seriously, you don't want to end your career on their career on a loss. I know. And for Maryland's side of things, you have no pressure going into this game because look at the spread. 17.5. Now, defensively, you got to contain the shooters, contain the slashers. You got to create some turnovers. You got to limit the points out turnovers, points in the paint, fast break points, second chance points. You got to get some defensive boards, and you don't want to let the other team live at the free throw line either. And another thing across the board, you got to be good in late game situations if need be. And offensively, you got to take care of the ball. You got to get some points out turnovers, points in the paint, fast break points, get some second chance points. I mean, you got to have good selection as well. And you got to make your free throws count. So that's pretty much all the keys I would think to win a game like this. And I know South Carolina did win last game, but it was not as big as it was expected to be. When you look at the spread for the Indiana game when the South Carolina just played, South Carolina was favored by 22.5. They didn't cover that. So really, Maryland has no pressure going into this game right here. South Carolina has all the pressure. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens. And this is a neutral site, but it is in Birmingham, Alabama, which is closer to South Carolina. Just a bit closer, but not too much. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens. So anyways, if you like this content, hit the like and subscribe button. See you guys later on the road to 800 subscribers. Of course, ultimate goal is 1,000 or more. So remind this course, like video, comment video, really helps YouTube algorithm. Some more people see it. So the video does help as well. So more people could watch. And if you're watching and not subscribed, hit subscribe button, hit the notification bell as well.